Elliott Carter's Canon for 3 unspecified treble instruments was written in 1971 in response to a call for compositions in memory of Igor Stravinsky by the music journal Tempo. Carter's use of a clear-cut 12-tone row in this piece is remarkable. Carter explicitly rejected 12-tone serialism throughout his long career writing atonal music. This piece seems to be Carter's only one employing the technique. His choice to compose a 12-tone canon can be understood through the context of the piece's status as a memorial to Igor Stravinsky. As Joe Strauss has noted, canons in Stravinsky's late music often have a somber, ritualistic quality. And the call for compositions in tempo was in fact inspired by 2 of Stravinsky's 12-tone memorial canons, his double canon for string quartet and epitaphium for flute, clarinet, and harp. Let's look at the row Carter uses for his piece. Carter's canon begins with an unaccompanied canonic entry in the first instrument, which plays the entirety of a 12-tone row as the canonic subject. This row, labeled P9, is played as a rhythmic palindrome. Its rhythm is identical played forwards or backwards. This dividing point also splits the 12-note melody into 2 distinct hexachords. Let's listen to this row. If we divide Carter's row into 2 hexachords, we can find their set classes, 012457 and 012358. These hexachords are Z-related, which means that they possess the same interval vector. Both hexachords contain the same number of each interval class, but their set classes are not the same. This construction suggests the notion of an inexact similarity. The 2 hexachords are related, but not identical. We can also look at the row's constituent tetrachords and trichords. The first and last of Carter's tetrachords are particularly suggestive. The first trichord, an O235, can be heard as a diatonic fragment. A, G, F sharp, E may be heard as a scale degrees 4, 3, 2, 1 in E minor. And the final tetrachord, an O147, can be understood as a D-flat major chord with an added semitone. Carter's 4 trichords can be easily separated into 2 groups. Trichords 1, 2, and 4 all contain a characteristic half-step interval, and trichord 3 is an O37, heard in the prime row as a diatonic major chord. As with the tetrachords discussed earlier, the trichords suggest an interplay between diatonic and chromatic elements. Joe Strauss has written about the importance of such interplay in Stravinsky's music. Carter's piece is an inversion canon, meaning that the second voice imitates the first in inversion. Carter chooses to invert the 12-tone subject over the pitch C5, generating the row I3. Looking at these 2 rows, we can notice that 2 pairs of semitones are preserved, or are invariant, under inversion. The dyads B and B flat and D and D flat appear in both rows, although they exchange their order positions. Moreover, both pairs are placed symmetrically around the pitch C, which appears in the same order position in both rows, since the I0 inversion operation maps C onto itself. The preservation of particular semitones after row inversion can also be found in Stravinsky's epitaphium, where the dyads F sharp F and G sharp A switch places within the row after inversion in a similar manner. Carter's use of invariant semitones therefore relates his canon to the pieces mentioned in the call for compositions issued by Tempo. The first 16 measures of Carter's canon establish the 3 canonic voices, which perform the rows P9, I3, and P9 in order. The second and third voices follow the first voice in exact canon at a 5-bar time interval throughout the entirety of the piece, with the second voice in inversion. After its statement of the 12-tone subject, the leading voice continues with a 5-note countersubject underneath the following row statement. This countersubject, combined with the tail end of the row, forms a compound melody that chromatically encircles the pitch C5 from above, with the pitches D flat and D, and from below, with the pitches A sharp and B. Note that these are the same semitones held invariant by the aforementioned inversion operation, and that C5 is the axis of said inversion. This countersubject ends with an A natural, the same pitch as the start of the prime row. Following this countersubject, the leading voice continues with long, slow, held-out tones that do not really follow any seeming pattern. The payoff for these notes occurs in the next section, but let's first listen to this opening 16 measures to hear the build of this canonic texture. Following the establishment of the canon, the final 10 bars of Carter's piece features a staggered hocketed melody consisting exclusively of long-held tones. As if by magic, the three canonic voices combine to jointly perform a statement of the I3 row. Jeremy Grimshaw describes this hocket as, quote, a startling variation on familiar material, as if the ink used to pen the subject was beginning to run across the page, causing the constituent voices of the canon to be subsumed into the subject itself, perhaps a lingering symbol of Stravinsky's passage into immortality. Following the hocketed statement of I3, the piece ends with another hocketed melody, this time of the original P9 row, ending on the pitch F in the final voice. According to Strauss, the note F plays a prominent symbolic role in Stravinsky's late music, which he describes as an emblem of death. Both his Requiem canticles and Epitaphium end with an F natural. Carter's canon does the same. Let's hear how this piece ends. Let's now take a look at the form of this piece. In its 26 measures, we hear 5 statements of the row, alternating between prime and inverted rows. Because the central statement is 6 measures long rather than 5, we may be compelled to hear the piece as a palindrome, with 2 halves, each 13 measures long. However, that's not really how I hear the piece. Instead, and I hope you agree, I hear the 3 canonic entrances as forming an A section, and the 2 hocketed row statements as a shorter B section. If we dive into the A section, we see a similar formal inequality. The 2 5-measure canonic entries seem distinct from the 1 slightly elongated 6-measure entry due to differences in their length and the fuller texture of the 3rd entry. If we look even closer at the 2 opening 5-bar phrases, we may again be tempted to divide these 5 bars into equal halves, 2.5 bars each. This highlights the rhythmic palindrome in each statement of the row and splits the row into its 2 constituent hexachords. However, this is not how Carter instructs performers to divide the phrase. Instead, he places a breath mark between the 3rd and 4th bars, splitting the phrase into 3-measure and 2-measure subphrases, and articulating the start of the 2nd subphrase with the all-important note C5, the axis of inversion for the piece. If we look at each of these formal subdivisions from the bottom up, we'll notice an interesting trend. The unequal divisions of Carter's phrases and form follow the ratios created by the mathematical Fibonacci sequence, in which each successive number is created by adding together the previous 2. These ratios, as you ascend the sequence, approach the golden ratio, a value closely associated with patterns in nature and aesthetics in art. Let's see how that plays out in the piece. Carter's 3-bar and 2-bar subphrases combine to make a 5-bar phrase, forming a 5:3:2 ratio. The 2 5-bar canonic entries, totaling 10 measures, combine with the 6-bar 3rd entry to make a 16-bar A section, forming an 8:5:3 ratio. Finally, the 16-bar A section combines with the 10-bar B section to form a 26-bar piece, forming a 13:8:5 ratio. The piece's recursive structuring around these Fibonacci numbered ratios gives the piece an inherent self-similar structure, which is also echoed by its canonic design and unique use of hocket. As we have explored, Carter's canon features explicit references to Stravinsky's compositional aesthetic, as well as a structural contrast between exact symmetry and inexact self-similarity. The outline on screen summarizes how various elements of the piece contribute to these aesthetic aims. Feel free to pause the video and look over this list. Ultimately, this canon serves as both a unique case study within Elliott Carter's distinctly non-serial body of work, as well as a compelling look at Stravinsky's aesthetic principles as observed and refashioned by a wholly different composer. Thank you for watching.